Hello everybody, welcome to another video. It is Barb Wire. Yes, we started the week talking about an exceptional comic book movie, and we're ending it talking about a terrible one. Barb Wire is a 1996 box office flop starring Pamela Anderson. It was meant to be a breakthrough action role for her. Instead, well, we got Barb Wire. Yeah, unfortunately, every action scene is very clearly a stunt double, and every Pamela Anderson scene, she is either stripping or acting like she has a killer hangover. So, yeah, this was a pretty awful outing, all things considered, especially for Pamela Anderson. This is a pretty humiliating movie to be a part of. If you could please like and comment on the video, that would be really appreciated. We are trying to hit 700 subscribers as soon as we can, and in order to do so, if you're new around here, please do subscribe. We got a nice thing going here, so be a part of it. Right, I'm just gonna start talking about the movie. So we open with a really boring text crawl where the narrator tells us that the future is bad. We got some rebels, we got some bad guys who are kind of like Nazis. It's sci-fi. It's a text crawl. Gosh, I wonder what influenced this. So I'm just gonna kind of talk about the plot as it thickens, because it's incredibly convoluted, and let's be honest, no one came for this for the plot. Yes, the opening 2 minutes of this movie is just Pamela Anderson stripping. Some guy calls her babe, so she impales his face with a high heel. Then she goes backstage in this strip club that she was getting water thrown at her and stuff. Apparently that was Pamela Anderson's idea, by the way. And she, I want to say, knocks out. I don't think she killed him. She knocks out her boss with a cigarette that is actually a blowed out. And she opens this fridge, and inside of it is this schoolgirl. And she says, "Have you ever seen Batman? How fitting." And they grappling hook out of the building. She brings the schoolgirl to her wealthy parents and is like, "Yeah, where's me money?" And they're like, "Oh, we only have half." So Pamela Anderson takes the money and their car, leaving them in the rain. Pamela Anderson's character, Barb Wire, is a horrible person. We then get an interrogation scene where the girl being interrogated just... Yeah, this is a very seedy movie. It's very fucking seedy, and some of the projected ideas for this scene in particular are kind of creepy. I'm not going to say them on YouTube, but they're kind of creepy. Yeah, so the interrogator gets this girl to rat out these two people, Dr. Corinna Devonshire, or for the rest of the movie known as Cora D, and this bloke called Axel Hood. They are two rebels. She has ratted them out because they have some sort of technology where they can read people's minds or something, and they kill her. And then the guy who was interrogating her kind of has a FaceTime with his boss, who I think is meant to be the President of America, which never gets addressed again. That is the last time we see. I think it's meant to be the President, because the main bad guy is actually the guy interrogating her. Then we see these two people, Axel and Cora D, out in the rain, and then we just, don't see them for a bit, because we cut to this club where Tiny Lister makes a cameo as the bouncer. This club features some bald guy talking to some guy about money, and that guy who isn't bald is never seen again. And then the bald guy comes over to this bloke named Charlie, who pretends he's not being drunk when he's clearly drunk. Charlie's drunkenness subplot never gets addressed again. We then see Axel and Cora D get ambushed by these people pretending to be border controller, like customs officers. They just shoot up their car and kill the two police escorts they had. But somehow Axel and Cora escape. I don't know how. Then we find out we're just kind of going back and forth between Axel and your one and the club. We then go back to the club and we find out that the club is owned by Barb Wire. Yes, that is Pamela Anderson's character name, Barb Wire. It's based on a comic. This movie was so bad, it killed that comic series. Wow. So Pamela Anderson's character, Barb Wire, is a mercenary, and she does her mercenary stuff to keep her club afloat. We then go to Axel and your one again, and they go and batter some goons, and then we go back to Barb Wire, who is now on a hit. She's going for a, what do you call it? She's looking for a, she's bounty hunting. That's what she's doing. She's bounty hunting. She goes to some weird sleazy bald guy's apartment where he just dresses up in a gimp suit and has a paddle. Yeah, so she takes the paddle off him and KOs him, because it turns out this sleazy bald guy's next door neighbor is this guy called Mr. Krebs. Yes. So Pamela Anderson blows up the wall between the two apartments and she takes Mr. Krebs hostage. Well, not hostage, she just kind of kidnaps him after this horrendous shootout where you can see the stunt double is so clear because the wig even covers her own face. It's such a terrible wig, and the shootout is awful. I had to pause it because it kind of caught me off guard, because every time a gun shoots, just a big flashy white light just flashes up on the screen, and it kind of hurt my eyes. When I say kind of, I mean it hurt my eyes. So yeah, after all that, she delivers Mr. Krabs to this other guy who's also sleazy, who takes Mr. Krabs, but he tries to not pay Barb Wire, but then Barb Wire's like, right, well, I'll shoot Mr. Krabs and then you can't use him. But spoiler alert, they actually kill Mr. Krabs anyway. So why did they then give her the money? Because they're like, oh, we can't have him dead. Like, they literally kill him. They just killed him next. So I don't know what that was about. Like, they could have easily just not paid her and let her kill him, because they literally kill him. That's why they have him, to kill him and take his eyes. I know, crazy? Well, that kind of gets explained in a second. She goes back to her bar and dances with some goofy soldier who's like a big fan of her, because apparently she's a famous mercenary, is Barb Wire. The chief of police then busts into the club, where we then get a brilliant piece of narration. You know, it's a really good encapsulation of the dialogue in this movie. Barb Wire says, at least he's honest, because he admits that he's a liar and a thief. That is not what being honest means. He checks some IDs and uses this eye scanner thing, because that's how they ID everyone, to just kind of pick some people off and arrest them. And he goes up to Pamela Anderson's office where she's naked. She is naked. She gets naked quite a bit in this movie. And, you know, big honest cop, policer man, just takes a bribe to not arrest anyone. You know, a real honest man. Then, just completely inconspicuously, we then cut to the club the next morning, where a guy shows up and is rude. So Pamela Anderson sets her dog on the rude guy, and it drags him out of the club by his dick. The dog's name's Camille, by the way, in case you were wondering. And then we just cut to nighttime again, back in the club, where the interrogators have come to the club, and as I said, they just look like a bunch of Nazis. They are looking for Cora D, and they're looking for Axel, and they're looking for Mr. Krabs. And Pamela Anderson's like, yeah, cool, I'm open to the idea of helping you guys find Cora D and Axel. Turns out that Charlie guy from earlier, remember him, is Barb Wire's brother, and he was in the rebellion with Axel and Cora D. Axel comes over for a chat with him. Barb Wire sees this, comes over, and pure just boxes him in the face, because Axel and Pamela Anderson had some history or something. They keep talking about this thing that happened in Seattle, and we do get a flashback, and I'll get to that in the flashback, but it's a load of shite. Like, just wait until I talk about the Seattle thing, but they keep talking about it. Axel and Charlie and Barb Wire, they keep talking about Seattle. Charlie sends Axel and Cora D off to where his mates in the rebellion hang out, because Barb Wire wants none of the rebellion. She's happy just being a mercenary. She's not on the Nazi side, she's not on the rebel side, she's just Pamela Anderson. And yeah, so Charlie, who is very much a rebel at heart, but he's now blind, so you know, he's not much use in the combat side of Barb Wire. He sends these two guys off to where his rebel mates hang out, and they have found Mr. Krabs' body with his eyes missing. So somehow Mr. Krabs' missing eyes are the reason why Cora D and Axel can't flee the country. they have to find his contact lenses to flee the country to get to Canada, because I think he had contact lenses that are like a passport that can get you anywhere. I don't know how Mr. Krabs got these. He was a pretty shit character. He died quite easily, but somehow he was the guy that had these mystical contact lenses, and Cora D, who's this like very famous rebel, needs them to get out of the country, because, you know, if she comes up on one of these eye scanner yokes, they'll ID her as Cora D and, you know, kill her. We cut to those goons who were there when that sleazy guy Smits, who took Mr. Krabs off of Pamela Anderson, his goons just get absolutely slaughtered by the Nazis, and the Nazis then take one of these goons' dead bodies and somehow read his mind and find out that Barb Wire has something to do with the people trafficking of Mr. Krabs to Mr. Schmitz. Flashback to Seattle, where Charlie, who's still at his site, and Barb Wire are on a helicopter trying to flee the battlefield, and someone comes over and says, "Oh, sorry Barb Wire, Axel can't get on this helicopter, he's busy, go without him." And she held that against him for years, that they didn't get the same helicopter home. Like, she made it out as if he like killed her dad or something. Like, yeah, they had a thing and then they got separate helicopters home, but like, she chose to not fight in the rebellion anymore. He was still in the rebellion. She knew where to find him. Like, come on, Barb Wire, you cannot be holding a grudge like that for so long. Schmitz shows up in Barb Wire's bar and is like, "Here, I'm way in over my head. I didn't realize those contact lenses I took from Mr. Krabs were so important and everyone was looking for them. So I don't want them anymore. I just want to live. Please, I'll sell them to you." And she's like, "Nah, I'm good, thanks." So he just leaves them in her bar anyway, and he flees. So these mystical contact lenses are now in Barb Wire's bar. Barb Wire, Pamela Anderson, totally naked in the bath. Axel walks in. They have a bit of a back and forth. Then they kiss. And then we find out that they have kissed in front of Cora D, who is Axel's wife. And this doesn't get addressed. He's like, "Oh, we only married each other for like identification purposes or something." But then they do also, at the end of the movie, leave together. And also, in the middle of all this, there is no romance between Barb Wire and Axel. So that kiss was a bit fucking weird. Like, we then find out that through a big old exposition done from Cora D, who used to be a scientist for the Nazis until she realised that, you know, they're Nazis, that this whole movie is actually about HIV. What? Yes, apparently, for some reason, I think the Nazis are trying to use HIV as a chemical weapon, and the rebels are trying to stop them from doing so, and that never gets addressed again. Also, I didn't even mention it, but Cora D has apparently had loads of plastic surgery done in the movie so that she doesn't look like Cora D anymore. So although to look at she's not Cora D, if you still do an eye scanner on her, you're gonna find out that it's Cora D. So, you know, was that worth it? I guess well, yes, it was, because then we are in the club and the Nazis and the police all show up and they're like, "Here, Pamela Anderson, gives us a look at their eyes or whatever so we can scan them." Actually, first they try and scan your man Charlie's eyes, which is kind of mean because, you know, he's blind and it doesn't work. But when they do that, Charlie breaks their eye scanner yoke, so when they go to do it on Cora D, it doesn't work. So Cora D and Axel escape the club. They absolutely wreck the club looking for this contact lenses thing because, you know, they now know that Pamela Anderson is somehow involved, but they can't find it because after they leave, Charlie lets us know that he had it in his pocket. He was there and he heard your man Schmitz hide it in the kitchen, so he went looking for it and found it. Barb Wire's plan is to sell these contact lenses so that they can go to Europe and get some surgery to fix Charlie's eyes, whereas Charlie's a bit more like, "No, let's give them to Cora D so she can flee the country and cure HIV." So they go off in separate directions. Charlie goes to that place where his mates and the rebels all hung out and finds out that they're all dead. The main one's actually literally been hung from the ceiling, and the Nazis are there and they torture Charlie until they kill him because they can't get any info out of him. Meanwhile, Pamela Anderson's character, Barb Wire, has gone to notorious king of the underworld, Big Fatso, who, by the way, has just casually killed your man Smits, put an apple in his mouth, cut his eyes out and left him in a fridge. Nice. Big Fatso's like, right, I will get you and Charlie to Europe on a plane, and I'll give you lots of cash if you give me them contact lenses. And she's like, yeah, cool, no bother. We'll meet you halfway at the airport and we'll sort it all out. Barb Wire goes back to her club where she's going to give that bald guy, Curly, her assistant. I don't know how much I've even mentioned Curly. He's a pretty forgettable character. She's just going to hand over the keys to the bar to Curly because apparently he's a good bloke. And then when Curly's like, oh, Charlie's not here, he went to see his mates in the rebel base, she's like, aw shit. So her and Curly and her dog Camille go off to the rebel base and they find Charlie hung and crucified and very much dead. Holy shit, Barb Wire. Wow. By pure chance, luckily for Barb Wire, Axel and Cora D have just rocked up to this base at the exact same time as her, and they all make a plan that they're all gonna meet up with your man Big Fatso. So on the way to the airport, halfway where she said she'd meet Big Fatso, she gets out of the car. This is after a horrendous car chase that I actually forgot happened, by the way. Terrible car chase. After said car chase, she meets up with Big Fatso halfway to the airport, and she's like, here, Big Fatso, here's these contact lenses. And then he's like, oh, thanks. I'm not giving you the money. Here's the police and the Nazis. You've been ambushed. Lol. So yeah, the police and the Nazis have Barb Wire, Cora D and Axel all surrounded, as does Big Fatso and his goons. But the chief of police guy from earlier, who's like Barb Wire's mate, pretends to handcuff her, so they all think, she's handcuffed, so that she has enough time to get out a fucking grenade, throw it in the air, blow up Big Fatso, and the policemen, the two rebels, and Barb Wire all escape. Where is Curly, by the way? Yeah, I forgot to mention, he's off burying Charlie. After a pretty poor action scene and then a absolutely hilarious forklift/crane scene, Barb Wire and Axel kind of just dispose of the villains quite easily. And yeah, it was a pretty fast final act actually, because turns out somehow she had the lenses in her eyes, even though they're like a really bright blue color and they clearly weren't in her eyes, but she takes them out, gives them to Cora D, and obviously they're really bright blue, so like it makes no sense. Like she just wasn't wearing those lenses the whole time. Like she did give the lens, you could see in the jar that she gave the lenses to Big Fatso, so how does she have them? I don't fucking know. She gives the lenses to Cora D, her and Axel escape. Cue big cringy edit where Pamela Anderson's meant to be a big action star. End of movie. I know. Shot just out of nowhere. Like that last action sequence was literally like 5 minutes. Well, it felt like it actually. Right, let's just talk about this movie as a whole, because it is now over. So this movie admittedly does not fly by. Although I may have made it sound like that last bit flew by, it didn't. The pacing of this movie is dreadful. It's so slow. There's many times in my notes where I just wrote, I am bored, I am bored, I am so bored. Halfway through this, I really regretted watching this movie. But by the end, I gotta say, although it is horrifically boring with the subplot about HIV and rebels and Nazis and mercenaries and owning a club and Curly and that guy with the dick who got dragged out and the gimp suit man, it is so bad it's good. The dialogue is dreadful, the one-liners are terrible, the acting is so wooden, but it is a bit of fun. It is a dreadful movie. Pamela Anderson's acting, as nostalgia critics said, Pamela Anderson is the Shaquille O'Neal of acting. Obviously being a joke about Shaquille O'Neal's movie Steel, which I might do a video on if you would like me to, because I've never seen it, and it's another god-awful comic book movie from what I've been told. Now, this movie is dreadful. It is definitely redeemed by how bad it is, though. It is so bad it's good. So my thinking is, so whenever you watch my what I watched this month, out of 5 I give my ratings because it's on Letterboxd, and I just use that as my database for ranking movies. If it's so bad it's good, I'll give it a 1 or more maybe. And if it's just so bad it's bad, like it's just bad, I'll give it a half. I gave this a 1 because there are things to laugh at in this movie. Am I surprised that it flopped? No, not at all. The plot is so convoluted and confusing and boring. The characters are like, had I not had Letterboxd in front of me with the names of some of these characters, I wouldn't have known their names. Yeah, this movie is dreadful, but do I recommend it? Oh god, that is tricky. I don't know if I could recommend this, you know. It is truly awful. If you like bad movies, you will love this. But I don't know if this is so bad it's good enough that anyone could laugh at it. I think you have to have a pretty sick sense of humor to find some of the stuff in this funny that's meant to be dead serious. But yeah, this movie is truly awful. It is terrible. And yeah, if you like bad movies, give Barb Wire a watch, because it is definitely a bad movie. Now, thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, please leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Like the video as well, obviously, if you could, that would be pretty cool. Please do subscribe. And yeah, I will be making another video next week. What that's about, you're just gonna have to wait and see, actually, for that one. Thank you very much, though. And yeah, see you next week.